Thanksgiving is known for its pies, and today I'm going to be showing you how I make my apple pie using 100% freshly milled wheat for the pie crust. Hey everyone, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia. For those who are new here, I teach all things real whole grains from a biblical perspective. No fake flour, store-bought flour on this channel. It's always 100% whole grain. This is our third video in our Thanksgiving series this year, and it's all about showing you how I make my apple pie. Now, funny thing about this video is I actually goofed kind of severely with the pie crust. I've already done a video about my pie crust, and I will link that below along with my recipe. So this is not the video to watch for an in-depth pie crust tutorial. I have already done that. But in this video, it dawned on me, like almost to the end of recording this, that I messed up on my pie crust. The pie crust that you see here is actually a mixture of butter and lard, which is in my recipe that I have on my website, which I do love this pie crust. It is very delicious, but it is a bit more crumbly than some people may like, and it is kind of difficult to roll out. You kind of have to baby it. So I think in this case, doing it over again, I probably would prefer all butter in the pie crust because it tends to not be as soft when rolling it out, so long as it's cold. But good news is I kept my mistakes in and show you kind of what I do to recover from them. So no, I am definitely not perfect by any means, and I definitely do not have the perfect pie crust. So if you have a better pie crust using 100% freshly milled wheat, definitely link it below for all of us to know about. I'm still working on mine, but this is the best one that I have so far. Now with apple pie, it is a double pie crust, so that's what makes it a bit more difficult is that top crust. You have to make sure it's pretty. If you want an apple dessert for Thanksgiving, but do not want to deal with the fuss of pie crust and, the double crust pie, all that stuff, I actually have a simple apple crisp recipe for you that's extremely easy, and I will link that down below in the description box as well. I do not show the apple crisp in this video, just the apple pie, but it's an easy recipe to follow that's much easier than a full-blown apple pie in my opinion. All right, so without further ado, let me show you how I make this apple pie. First off, of course, we have to start with some apples. These are Granny Smith apples, and you're going to want about 4 pounds of it. And then you're going to peel and core and slice them into pieces just like this. Then I prefer to cook my apples, so we're actually going to cook them, which you put them in a pot, cover them with water, and then put them on a boil and simmer until they are nice and soft. Let us talk a few minutes about the apples. Apple pie. You actually have many different options. Some people do not cook the apples, and that is fine. It will just be a slightly different texture when it comes out of the oven for your pie. So here are the options that you have. First of all, no matter how you do it, you do want to peel them and core them and slice them. And I definitely recommend these little apple core wedges things. These are awesome. I'll link one down below. Now what I have here are the apples that are peeled and sliced and cored, and I have cooked them until they are soft. And the reason that I've stuck with this is because I used to have a source of apples where I would get them by like the 20-30 pound case, and I had a lot of apples, and I would can them. And so what it's equivalent to is this is the point where then I would can the apples. It's just a water bath canning. And I would can them into quart jars. And 1 quart jar is what I would need for my apple pie. It's kind of up to you. The biggest thing is if you don't want to cook your apples, and if you're using one of these wedges, you need to cut them in half, each piece in half again, to make them thinner if you're not going to cook them beforehand. And that'll just help it the texture be a bit better, and for the apples to not be crunchy when they come out for the pie. So let's drain this and go ahead and get the filling made up, and I'll be back here with the pie crust. This is my pie crust that I have made up. What I have here is enough for actually 4 pie crusts, and so I'm going to divide this up. You will need 2 pie crusts for this recipe because with apple pies you have a bottom crust and you have a top crust. We're going to separate these out, put 2 of them in the fridge for at least 20 minutes before we need to roll it out. Here we have our drained apples, and this is 4 cups of cooked apples. Now the amount of apples that I had is a little over 4 cups cooked, which will be perfect to use. You will use all of it if you have a deeper pie crust or pie pan, which unfortunately I do not. I do not have a deep dish, so I limit it to 4 cups. So to this, we are going to add half a cup of sugar. This is cane sugar, organic cane sugar that I like to use. And then a 1/4 cup of freshly milled soft white wheat flour, just like our pie crust has the soft white wheat flour. And then we have 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And then of course we need some salt. This is a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. My favorite type of salt to use is the Redmond's salt. I have a coupon code for you below. Now we also will need 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter cut into small pieces, but that is later. So let's mix this up. All right, so there we go. We have it nice and mixed. As you can see, we still have juices coming out, and that's fine. That's completely normal, even though these were drained. But now let's grab our pie crust and roll that out. Oh, hey, don't mind me. We're gonna interrupt this little broadcast. And I get asked many times where I purchase my grains in bulk from. And I have many sources, but my main favorite source is definitely Pleasant Hill Grain. They are by far the cleanest wheat berries I have ever received. This is actually one of the buckets that it comes in. Pleasant Hill Grain isn't just for grains, but it's also everything pertaining to grain. It truly is a one-stop shop. And the great thing about Pleasant Hill Grain as well is that you're supporting small-time family business. Plus, their customer service is amazing. So if you're wanting quality, I definitely and highly recommend shopping with Pleasant Hill Grain. Just go to grainsandgrit.com/PHG. Now back to filling up my grains. Now, if you've watched my pie crust video, the thing about pie crust with fresh milled wheat, it is tricky. It's just going to be different, especially if you're used to using all-purpose store-bought flour. It may fall apart on you a little bit, but that is okay because you can always piece it back together. So as you can see, this is, it's moldable and everything. And we're going to flour our surface. I need to get one of those cool little mats that have like the measurements and stuff. But this is my pie pan that I'm using. It's not a deep dish. It's a regular, probably really cheap pie pan. I really need to be a big girl and get me a deep dish one. But this is how I like to do it. And I like to use a French rolling pin whenever it comes to pie crust. So what I'm using to dust everything with this is again, the soft white wheat flour. And we're gonna start rolling this out as best you can till it's pretty thin. And you are gonna have it where it overhangs a bit on the pan, and that's fine. And if it starts pulling up like that, it means you need to flour your rolling pin a bit more. Okay, oh, see, sometimes it does come apart, and that's okay because it goes right back down, and it's gonna be fine. Okay, now do make sure that you are well dusted on the bottom surface, because as you can tell, I tried to lift it and it completely came apart. So we're gonna have to restart this process. Now, a little hack. If you are just so frustrated with this falling apart, if it just keeps not working, a little trick that I use is I actually shape it in the pie pan itself. And so what I do is I take my fingers, because again, no one's gonna see the bottom. It's okay. So what I like to do, because this is just easier, especially on the bottom crust. Now we will have to baby the top crust a bit more, but I just like to kind of mush it in here, keep things in place. Okay, and then start spreading it out. Another option that you have is one of these little pizza roller type things where I use the smaller end for here, and I do need to dust it with flour because it does want to stick like you just saw there. And I know, again, this is not chef worthy of a pie crust as far as what it looks like. It is easier with store-bought flour, but the taste is still super good. It turns out really good. And again, no one is going to see this on the bottom. Again, we're going to have to finesse it a little bit on the top, but this little roller, this tiny roller, really helps. So we're going to start doing this, mushing it out, because again, we do want it thin like a pie crust. It is going to hang over. That is what we want. Kind of go like this. Again, you don't want it super thick in places. Now make sure, and you can feel this, that you don't have any spots in here that are way thicker than others. So that's the biggest thing, doing it this way. Again, you can roll it out. That's fine. But for me, I start getting impatient, and definitely on the bottom, this works very well. We're gonna stick this into our fridge while we do our filling. Now here we go to the bane of my existence, and that is the top crust. Now the key here is a whole lot of flour, because I do not want it sticking at all. The moment it sticks to the counter, it will be falling apart. You're just going to really have to baby this. Now one thing I forgot to do is actually go ahead and roll it out on a flexible type cutting mat, but thankfully I was able to just slide it in carefully here, and this actually allows me to much easier place it over my pie. Once we're done with this, we're gonna grab our filled in bottom pie crust, and we're freezing it right here because I forgot to add the butter on top. So those 2 tablespoons of butter, you cut it on top. And then we're gonna flip over the pie crust with the courage of our convictions, and thankfully this worked out. And now we're going to actually shape it to make it look like your typical cute little pie. Now while I am shaping the pie crust on the edges, I am also pinching off any excess, and I don't know the method for this, but it's just where I am pinching it in between 2 fingers to give it this typical pie look. And then of course we need to just use a very sharp knife and make slits at the top in whatever design that you like. It wasn't until I was editing this video that I realized that this isn't even, but that is okay. So we do need to make slits for it to vent, and then we're going to bake it. Bake it in a preheated 450-degree oven for about 40 to 50 minutes. This was 40 minutes for me. It may take longer if you are using uncooked apples, but we're gonna let it cool for a little bit and then slice it open. As you can see, the crust is a bit crumbly using the butter and lard mixture, but it is still good. The biggest thing is the filling itself is not seeping out everywhere, and it's not soupy. And of course you can serve this with vanilla ice cream or some Cool Whip on top, and it is absolutely delicious. And we're gonna try a few bites right here. There you have it, y'all. An apple pie made with 100% freshly milled wheat. My family really enjoys this recipe, so do not be put off that it may not look Pinterest perfect. I've never had anyone complain about the apple pie, and it's always gone when I make it for any sort of dessert. Hope this video was helpful for y'all, and that this series has given y'all some ideas for Thanksgiving that you can practice. As always, if you have any recipe requests, let me know in the description box below. And the biggest thing is, do not worry if you make mistakes. As Julia Child said, when you're alone in the kitchen, who's to see? What ultimately matters is that it looks fairly good, and definitely that it tastes good. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye!